As we've seen in our previous lectures throughout the course thus far, we have been able to understand that we can create expression logic using an if construct. Now, the very last part of the last lecture I presented to you, we introduced the notion of set analysis. So in this particular example, we created a stock on hand average month target. So what's happening in this set analysis is that we're actually telling the query to grab a subset of data where the budget subcategory equals SOH forecast, and we're going to apply an average aggregation across that data set. So what we're going to do in this lecture is focus a little bit more on what set analysis is, and then we'll spend a few more lectures, say about 20 minutes in total, of updating this dashboard to reflect set analysis based expressions. So hopefully by the end of that next few lectures, you'll actually have a good understanding on how to apply set analysis in your expressions. Set analysis is written as an expression that aggregates your measures that are contained within the model. The aggregation is represented by a set of defined conditions. The measures are usually defined within a chart object, such as a line chart or a bar chart, for example, and it restricts the expression to a set of data. This set of data is already within your model. So what we have, and as it suggests by the name, set analysis is to analyze a set or a subset of data that you've extracted from within the model itself. The nice thing about set analysis is you do not have to learn it again if you want to move to QlikView, for example. The language syntax applies to both products. So why do we use set analysis? Well, we use it for comparing date and time periods, for example. We can predicate or restrict to specific dimensions, and we can exclude values in the expression as well. And that's just a few examples. There's much more that you can do with set analysis. So where don't we use set analysis? Well, basically we do not use it in the data load editor. This is one area of scripting where the set analysis construct is not applicable. The set analysis expression is a chart expression, and the data is actually already in the model, so you don't have to reload data every time you want to do something within a set analysis expression. So if I have a quick look at this, we can see we're actually calculating the stock on hand for a particular supplier. And if you have a look inside your data, we'll see that we have supplier IDs that supply our business with actual product. So in this case, I'm looking for supplier ID 3 to give me the stock on hand. And that's already there in the data set. I can easily change that predicate, so I can make it supplier ID 1, for example, and it dynamically updates, as you can see. So there's no real need here to reload data, if you will. It's already contained within your model, ready to go. So here's a simple example of a set analysis expression that provides us with a summary value of the January stock on hand. So let's start to explore how this calculation is built. So I'm going to create two KPIs on my dashboard here to summarize the stock on hand value for 2015, January 2015, and the stock on hand value for December 2015. I can create set analysis expressions to do this. We can follow some simple steps to make creating our set analysis expression a lot easier. So let's start with the first one, which is to choose our expression aggregation. So for our expression, we're going to use the sum. Step 2 is to choose the field or fields we want to aggregate. In our case, for this calculation, we want to use the stock on hand. So by now your expression should look like the one on the screen, but now we need to actually apply some conditions, and this is where we utilise the set analysis. With step 3, we'll define the condition that the set analysis is going to predicate our data on for calculating this particular measure. Set analysis expressions are contained within curly braces. And the first thing we need to do is put a set of curly braces before our selected fields. When building up our expression, we will need to firstly identify what we want to include for measurement here. And this is done using identifiers. These are represented by the symbols $1, and $1 and there are a few others as well. But let's have a look at how these three influence the selection of data within your set analysis expression. Now you'll see that we have our KPIs presented for the year 2015, month of January and December. What's important to note here is that it will still respect any of the selections the user makes, because what happens here is if I select February, you'll see everything's gone to 0. This is because February is not within the scope of what this calculation has actually specified. Now, to make that happen where it ignores all of the selections the user makes, in other words, only select the data that is specified in this set analysis, we use the identifier 1. So if I just place 1 in this expression, and it always goes immediately after the curly bracket, but before the angle bracket. The brackets here I will talk about in the next lecture. These are the modifiers, but for now I'm just going to put 1 in there and 1 here. And what I'm doing is telling this set analysis to ignore all of the selections the user makes. So there you go. So it's basically working within all of the data specified by this selection criteria. So that's what the number 1 does. And we saw this working in our stock on hand budget target in the previous lecture. The dollar symbol respects current selections. In other words, when you have a dollar symbol within the set analysis, it's telling the set analysis to respond with its calculation across the data set that is relevant to the selection the user has made. So if the user is clicking on filters or clicking on or lassoing on objects on a chart, then the calculation will update accordingly. So I'm just going to demonstrate this now. To demonstrate the dollar symbol, I have to make a slight change to our expression. I'm just going to modify the January stock on hand first of all. So what we'll do is we'll just edit the expression here, and we're going to remove the 1 symbol. Now don't forget, all symbols will be placed immediately after the curly brackets and before the modifier bracket. More of the modifier discussion in the next lecture. So I'm just going to put $1. The dollar is the default, so you could potentially leave it out, it'll still work. But for clarity and possibly best practice, you could leave that in there. That's what I prefer to do. And now, in order that we can respect the current selections here, we have to tell the set analysis not to force the selection of January. So again, I'm just going to remove the month of January constraint, and I'm going to click apply. Now, if we had more than one set of data in here for many years, then of course year 2015 would force the data selection for 2015 and all of our month filters would be applicable. So for this case, it's fine to leave it there. It explains the expression a little bit further. So if I click done, notice two things will happen. This expression on the right here will not change, because it's not going to respect the selections or the current selections of the user, is it? It's actually going to just say, I'll use everything that's available, thank you very much. So if I click February, see how our figure has changed? And to validate that further, let's click December. And you'll see now that the values are identical. So the dollar sign is saying, I will respect the user's selections and then calculate based upon whatever predicate is in the set analysis. Okay. 1 minus dollar symbol, what this allows our set analysis to do is calculate across the set of records that have been excluded by the user selection. So let's jump in and have a quick look at how this works. Now here we have our KPI that respects the user selections denoted by the dollar symbol in the expression here. So for example, if I click February, it updates accordingly. Now you notice on the right hand side I have a duplication of this KPI. Now this KPI here, I want to calculate the excluded records. So the excluded records are, as you can see on the filter here, the grayed out rows are the excluded records. So what this filter is saying is that we've selected February as denoted by the green, and everything else has been left out. And the calculation here has respected that and calculated for year 2015 the stock on hand for February. So let's just uncheck that. Let's put a 1 minus dollar symbol in this expression to calculate the excluded rows. 1 minus, and don't forget it always goes in front of the first curly bracket and before the first modifier symbol. Alright, now I'm just going to click done. Now you notice straight away it went to 0. Why is this? Well, this is because nothing was excluded from the filter list. We haven't actually made a selection yet. So if I click January, and we notice, before we go and do that of course, notice that 1.24 million is the stock on hand. If I click January, we can say that we now have excluded 1.11 million and the January value is 120.9k. Now if you add these two numbers together, you should arrive at the value of 1.24 million. So this is how you calculate excluded data, and you will come across a number of instances where this is required. Okay, so I think I'll pause here, have a break, and in the next lecture we'll look at modifiers. So this is where we can actually then change what we're going to analyse. I'll see you there.